Hello, welcome to Madame After Midnight. This is a podcast where we talk about life and its many pursuits of sustainable happiness. I'm your host, Madame Donut. Now, I always say this podcast can make you hungry or horny, so put the kids to sleep. Now, I have to admit, it looks like daytime because it is. This is a pre-recording of a podcast. I am on location, yay, drinking beer with the one and only owner and master brewer behind Mahalo Aleworks. Please welcome my guest, Mr. Ben Kopf. Hello, Ben.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for coming.
Oh my God. I know it's been a busy, crazy few weeks for you guys.
Yeah, it has. We just celebrated our first anniversary this past week, so that was kind of crazy. Of the brewery, yeah.
I was going to ask that because we did a collaboration December of, well, technically last year.
Yeah.
And you had just opened just a few months.
Correct.
So when did you open?
September 1st. Yeah, September 1st we opened. Last year we did a little bit of a soft opening the week before that, but officially we opened September 1st. So yeah, we literally just had that not too long ago here. You know, it's kind of crazy.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah,
it's crazy
thank you.
Because you opened, I mean, the pandemic's been on. So tell us a little bit about when you planned on opening this and a little bit of your background.
Yeah, so just a brief background. It's just I was a home brewer for many years, starting back in 2005. My cousins and I had wanted to start a brewery back then and didn't have the working capital or the experience to make it happen. And then 15 years later, give or take, 13 years later, I really wanted to do it again. And my wife was the one who convinced me, nah, do it. I just wasn't really digging what I was doing previously. I'd been doing that for 10 years and kind of looking for a change. And so it seemed like a good opportunity to do it. And she convinced me to give it a go. So yeah.
So this is the first time you actually made beer professionally?
Correct. Yeah. And I have two experienced brewers that do make the beer now. So I was only in the brew deck for the first few weeks we opened just to get things going. Yeah. So we all collaborate and come up with recipes, things like that. But they make 100% of the beer. I have not brewed beer in almost a year now. So
you did just come up with the ideas of the kind of beers that you want to create, or that's all collaborative? Yeah,
I mean, it's all collaborative, and a lot of the beers that we've come out with recently, the brewers came up with completely on their own and said, hey, we want to try this, or we want to do this. And so it's kind of fun to be able to brew anything and everything, all the different ale styles. We don't make lagers, but we make a lot of colder fermented ales that sort of simulate lagers, if you will. But we don't have like core beers, we don't have like the same 5 beers all the time or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we pretty much brew a different beer every 3 days. Some of them, like the Idaho that I'm drinking, it's one of the ones in your flight, we make once a month or so, every couple months. We've remade it a handful of times just because it's one of the more popular beers. And the Hibiscus Blonde is also, we've made that a few times. But for the most part, every week there's 1 or 2 brand new beers that are just something that kind of strikes us. And
when you came up with the concept, you just knew it's gonna be a rotating menu concept.
100%.
You weren't planning on bottling it and putting it on the shelf somewhere?
No, we actually did buy a canning machine because we were under construction. The building was a dirt when we started. So we were under construction when COVID started. In March of 2020, it was like insane. And we were like, what does this mean? And so long story short, all the restaurants closed, as you remember, nothing was open. And so we didn't know if we would even be able to open a tap room when the brewery finally got finished. And so we bought a small canning machine with the thought that maybe we were going to be stuck only selling beer out the front door. But fortunately, by the time we were actually ready to open, we were, businesses were open at like 50% occupancy or whatever. And I can't really use the canning machine while the tap room's open because the whole walk-in is full of kegs, not cans. And we would need all the seating area for storage of empty cans and things like that. So that was sort of an insurance thing. But no, the whole concept was to sort of have a tap room. It's a third place. People hang out. We have live music 4 nights a week. We have trivia. We have a bunch of board games people can check out. So it really is about, the space and being here just as much as the beer.
Yeah. So I like that you mentioned third place. So that was always the concept. Like it is like a place that you go to. Like, I lived in Europe for a little bit, and I love that neighborhood pub feeling. That's a whole family vibe, actually. Like kids go there. I used to go there to study. I was in Europe to study abroad.
Awesome.
but I was always in the pubs.
Yeah.
But it's a great way to know the people who live there.
Totally.
So you do ales, which is
Correct.
very European. Is that where it's sort of kind of?
Yeah, I mean, this, the two big differences in a nutshell. An ale is like a hot fermenting yeast that ferments kind of vigorously, and it's top fermenting, whereas like a lager takes a lot longer and it gets fermented cold. Mm-hmm. And so for us here, it just seems weird to me to be forcing yeast to be cold in a tropical climate. Like the places that make lagers are like the Czech Republic and Germany and places where it's cold, and that yeast came from there because it likes the cold. Yeah. Well, it's not cold here. So it's sort of like, let's use the yeast that likes the ambient temperature, and it requires less energy, and B, it's faster, and it's just one of those things where most of the fruited beers also, we use all fresh local organic fruit, and there's not a lot of fruited lager. I mean, again, ales kind of really go towards that fruity tropical side, or more malty, more flavorful, and the fruit just works better in ales, in my opinion. I mean, you'll see some fruited lagers like lime and refreshing things, but when it comes to like tropical fruit, and most lagers tend to be less flavor, more crisp and refreshing, if you will. Yeah. So the ales just work better for fruit.
I love that you took on like, okay, where are we? Because I find that there's a lot of people with great ideas. They go move somewhere, or they have this business idea, and then they inject their idea whether or not it fits the place. You know, and I love that you thought about the weather here and like, what can we do? Because when I talk to chefs, I love it when they say, okay, well, I make this dish elsewhere, but I'm here, so what can I use that's from here? Yeah. So you're basically making beer in the
Yeah, I mean, totally. It's like this island is so full of amazing fruit and herbs and, I mean, flowers and all this cool stuff. It's like, why wouldn't you just use it? I mean, it seems, like I said, it just seems silly to me to kind of make something that, doesn't really work here. I don't know. Yeah. And there's, like, I don't want to knock on anyone, because most of the Hawaii breweries make lagers. Yeah. It's just, we just chose not to, and it's kind of,
I love that. That really touches me, because I like to cook that way. I don't... I mean, we've all lived, I think a lot of us have moved around and have had experiences where like, okay, this is great in one place. But I find that whenever I move, I might bring a knowledge from somewhere, but I always want to like really respect the heritage and the climate and what I'm getting out of the space. I always talk about this podcast. It is a sexy podcast, but I make sustainability sexy.
I'm not incredibly sexy at the moment, sorry. But I'm doing what I can.
Oh my gosh, sorry, shut the fuck up. I can say this because this is an adult podcast.
There you go.
But it's so funny because your beautiful wife, she's so cute. She's like, do you want me on the podcast? Because I'm so pregnant. I don't know if it's a sexy vibe that you're thinking of. And I said, girl, I can make anything sexy. I know exactly how you got there. You had a lot of sexy times. So I was like, don't challenge me with a sexy threat, because I know where to find that. I can find it anywhere.
That's awesome.
Anyways, I know that you have to rush at some point, talking about sexy time, that you've had plenty. You're having like a fourth baby.
Caking number 4 in October. Yeah, or some of our friends at home were joking they need to buy us cable, but we're done. We're done at this one. So no, it just was like, it took forever to have the first 2, and then the third one just sort of happened, and it was like, oh, okay, wow. And
the third one was like during COVID.
She was born the very week of lockdown in March of 2020. So not only were we under construction on the brewery when COVID started, we had her, and then it was just, it was all kinds of crazy.
I mean, you got the experience of crazy parenting.
So, now we have a 4th coming, and then we're done, 100%. We take a whole row on an airplane, and no more. Yep, that's it.
Yes, that's maximum.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's do a tasting.
Yeah,
I want to come up with
exactly.
Sorry, but this is actually really exciting, because we are doing another beer and donut collaboration this weekend. That's why I wanted to rush in and do this.
Got to pick out the beers that we're going to use for the donuts. Yeah, which is awesome.
Like you said, it changes all the time. So the donuts that I made last year might not fit.
Totally.
So let's start. This is, you were saying. This
so
is
if you start on that side, that's what I'm drinking now, is the Idaho. So it's a hazy. I think you did use a hazy last time. I can't recall off the top of my head which one it was, but this is the Idaho. It's had some tweaks over the times we brewed it, but this is one of our more popular beers. We did a brute version called Drydaho for the 1 year anniversary, just as a spin on it. But I think for a donut, the regular one would probably be better. It's just more sweetness, rounder. Speaking of the adult podcast, a lot of the customers have plenty of jokes about the Drydaho beer, and that's not the way they like their hose. And we did not intend. It was literally a customer
Yeah.
mentioned too. Like, you know, it was like a brute version. It's like brute means dry, so
Yeah.
it's dry Idaho. It's dry Idaho.
No,
So
not
that's where it
dry
came
hoe.
from.
You want them wet.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I just realized, like, go back to wet thing. This is totally semi-unrelated, but every time it goes into the naughty stuff, it is related. But I don't know exactly what I was talking about. I was like, that's not giving me a hard-on, is what I said. Like, it's just not,
How funny.
I don't like it. And my friend's like, but you're a girl, you don't get a hard-on. I was like, well, it's a girl, it's a
It's a
female
figure of
hard-on.
speech.
And she's like, no, you get your panties wet. I was like, oh, I said, that's what gushing means. When I'm gushing about something, that means I'm wet.
I
That's
suppose.
a female version of getting a hard
Yeah.
on. Oh my gosh, I'm
Right.
gushing. I'm so sad. Like, that's what it means. Now, when I say,
That's
when
funny.
somebody says you're gushing, I was like, you're turned on. That's my new
There you
like,
go. That's
version
the new
of gushing.
thing.
But this is very lean. And I definitely imagine pairing this with something definitely richer.
Yeah, so all of the flavor comes from hops. There's no fruit in the Idaho, so you're getting all the tropical stone fruit, you know, different varieties, but it's just from the hops itself. There's no actual fruit in that.
Yeah.
Whereas the next beer, the guava sour, is a lot of local guava. We actually use the guava has to get pureed. 'Cause basically, like if you put whole chunks of fruit in, you don't get all like as much surface area.
Yeah.
So everything we do, it's either juiced or pureed or mashed at least.
Yeah.
And so that for the guava sour that's coming up next, there's I think it's 80 pounds of guava, pureed guava in a 5-barrel batch. So like each keg has like 8 pounds of guava puree in it. So, and then the sours, obviously the sourness you can make, like with the sourdough comes through, but you know, the guava flavors really kind of come out in that beer, if you
I
will.
kind of want to make this into a malasada filling.
Oh, that could be awesome. That could be cool. I think you did a Lilikoi one last time.
Yeah.
We had the Lilikoi
That's
sour.
a classic one.
Yeah.
That's a classic one that's on my menu. But
Awesome.
guava.
And the guava, it's pretty fun. I think this is the second time we've made the guava sour. We used guava in a pog sour one time. But that one, I feel like the orange kind of really overpowered the guava. Guava is such a subtle flavor.
Yeah.
And so then we were all talking for the next time. It's like, let's just do guava.
Yeah, it's
And
really good. I can taste the guava.
Thank you. Yeah. It came
More
through,
prominently, yeah.
which is pretty cool.
And it's so like it's a good amount sour. Like I think it would make a good cream filling, like a sour.
Yeah,
cream.
totally. The next one's the hibiscus blonde. So that's a blonde ale that then gets secondary fermented on hibiscus flowers, organic dried hibiscus flowers. And the funny thing with this one is the first few times that it was made, this was Sarah's recipe that she had from before, and we were putting it on the hibiscus and it was sitting there for a few days to get all the color and get all of the flavor out. But when you leave beer on a plant matter, you also start to pull out like the twigginess and the herb part of it. And so this last time, the brewers decided to try recirculating it. And so they put all of the hibiscus flowers in, and then, you know, basically through a sanitary pump, just kind of like stirred the beer, if you will, in it. And I think it was like 20 minutes that it pulled out all the color, all the floral notes, like a slight tartness, but you don't get any of the grassy twigginess at all,
Yeah,
which
because
is
I
pretty
think
cool.
hibiscus. That's why they use hibiscus for teas a
Yeah.
lot, because they do want that extra twigginess that you're talking
Well, and that's a
about.
good analogy too. So, like, you know, when you make tea, if you leave it in too long, it starts to get like twiggy.
Yeah, and
it's sort of the same
tannic.
exact thing.
Yeah.
And so you get the tan. So this way, you get like the floral notes of the hibiscus, and you know, also the color is really cool.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating.
It's
That literally
so
comes out in like
pretty.
20 minutes of circulation. But
That is
I think
really
it's like
good.
10 or 12 pounds of hibiscus. There's been tweaks to the recipe. So even when we rebrew something, because we don't have like a can on the shelf that's the exact same thing and it has to be identical every time. Every time that something gets brewed, it's kind of improved the next time, if you will. So it's sort of like, all right, so you've probably done this before. You make a donut and you're like, I like it, but,
Oh, all the time.
you know, and so then it's like, you'll remake that same donut, but it
it's
might
never
not be
the same.
Yeah, so,
It's never the same. In fact, I made sunflower donuts last week.
Awesome.
I went to Pacific Biodiesel's farm. They gave me a little tour, and the sunflower, 100% of the flour is edible. Now the
Cool.
flavor's not super strong, obviously
Right.
it's all in the seeds, but basically I made like the sunflower petals into like something kind of, you know, you've had kale chips. So I made that texture with the sunflowers to put it on as a topping, and when I did that, obviously I used the sunflower oil. So everything is just more sunflower than it really is, but it's just a lot of fun to use it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I told them, it's like, this is sunflower donut 1.0. This is the first time I've worked with it.
Yeah.
So I'm already imagining the 2.0 is going to be slightly different, you know? It's fun. It's ever growing, and that's why I love how you're making the beers as well. It's seasonal. And
well, and that's the cool thing about using local fruit. So a lot of people have had, you know, especially visitors will come and they'll say, oh, you know, your grapefruit IPA was good, but it just wasn't as grapefruity as the one from so-and-so that they're used to. And it's like, because they're using grapefruit flavoring. And it's like amplified it's like chemical version of real fresh grapefruit. Like when you use real fruit in beer, the yeast are turning the sugar into alcohol, and then they're modifying, there's like biotransformation that's happening. So it's not going to taste like grapefruit hitting you in the head. You know what I mean? It's like a subtle grapefruit flavor.
Yeah, and also ripeness of the fruit changes per season and per batch. I've worked with people, like, you know, they ask about, say, a more natural, like no pectin, if I make a no pectin jam, and they're like, oh, it's a little looser this time. It's like, well, first of all, fruit's always different, and you're imagining this Schmucker's thing that has the same texture, and it's if anything, I don't like that texture. It's so fake. It reminds me of the canned beet out of things like Thanksgiving dinners that I always wondered why people ate that thing. No wonder people hated beets because they never had the real thing, you know, and so the expectation's different with the flavor. But again, when people change that mentality, every fruit out of the same tree will be very different. So
and I mentioned earlier, like my shoulders are sore. I've been like planting fruit this weekend, so it's so funny because we're up to now over like 22 kinds of fruit that we're growing ourselves. And so it's going to be a few years before we get a yield big enough for anyone to only use our fruit.
This is going to be because it's going to be basically farm to beer.
It's kind of fun. So right now we get fruit from amazing farms all over upcountry. So they'll say, hey, we have this fruit now. Do you want it? It's like, we'll make a beer out of it. Again, we don't have to make the same beer all the time, but I mean, we're doing all sorts of funky different fruits and you know, fun things. And so I don't know, it's just kind of fun. But and then Lilikoi too is like one of our most popular beers. Every time we do it, we kind of make a Lilikoi shortage on the island, and like we've actually had a few chefs. We've had a few chefs be like, "What the hell? Where'd all the Lilikoi go?" I'm like, "Sorry, we use 40 pounds of Lilikoi juice in one batch of beer. That's a lot of Lilikoi."
That's a lot. I do have a guy who sometimes shows up. It's like $1 a pound. It's like, I'll take 100 pounds. It's like, I don't care what it needs.
I mean, it is what it is. So we've got Lilikoi at home. We're growing, and so you know, it's just to supplement it. But again, it takes a lot of Lilikoi to make 40
a lot
pounds.
of fruit. I had on the show High Spice a couple weeks ago.
Awesome.
It's the same thing. Like, I love them. They kind of work the same way. We're like, okay, fruit, like real fruit, no thickeners, and so you really taste the fruit. They're very flavorful, just like your ales. I taste the fruit.
We have their hot sauces down in the merch area here. So
that's awesome.
Yep, very cool.
Gosh. Okay, so the fourth one is the pineapple.
So it's So the N2 is nitro. So this is a funny one. So it's a pineapple sour, and we've been sitting here so long. So unfortunately, most of the creamy nitrogen has disappeared. But it's served like Guinness, so it actually is like done on nitro, and so it has that foamy, creamy Guinness head that you can watch kind of cascade. But then it's a milk sour, so it actually is back sweetened with lactose. So it's milk sugar.
Very buttermilky with the flavor, but lean.
Yeah, and so again, like unfortunately, you're not going to get any. I'll have to pour you another one, like that's like new when you do it because you can see the cascade.
I'll do it before I leave today.
Yeah, right. Have another one.
I'm going to go downstairs, do homework.
So this one's fun because it was one of our first times, or if not first time, of actually using lactose in a beer, which is pretty popular in like milk stouts and like a lot of the crazy sweet beer because lactose is non-fermentable, and so the yeast don't eat it, and so the sweetness stays in the beer instead of turning it alcohol, right? So normally yeast eat the sugar and they turn it into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Long chain sugars that are more complex stay in the beer, and like so if you have a beer that's like really sweet, then it's a sugar that the yeast couldn't eat, and so lactose is one of those sugars. So you can back sweeten it. And then next time we do it, we'll probably try even doubling the lactose again to see if we can get even more sweetness. But kind of the thought behind this was sort of like almost like more of a cocktail than a beer, because it's like a sweet pineapple sour. Like if you put that on ice, it would like almost be like a cocktail instead of a beer. But
it's one of the things I like about your beers is that I imagine food with them all the time.
Yep.
And I always say on this podcast, it either makes me hungry or horny, or this. It's the same. I can't tell the difference. I swear to God, I can't tell the difference.
They both trigger the same pleasure receptors.
That's what I was
you know
saying
what I mean?
the other day. And then after you get, either you eat or you have sex, you want to take a nap.
And some people do both at the same time.
Oh my God! Yesterday, sorry. Yeah.
I mean, there's literally like the whole like eating donuts during sex. I'm sure that's someone's done that.
I was saying yesterday, I had a sexy Sunday yesterday where it's like I was literally eating, having sex, eating, having sex. So I was like, I love the Sunday. Like this is a great day. Awesome. And that's beer kind of does the same thing where I'm like, I'm gonna have a beer, I'm gonna nap. So I don't know. I don't know where I went there.
I don't know either. And then the last one is actually a tank sample. So that's not finished yet. So that is a stout that's still in a fermentation tank. So it's not cold and it's not carbonated.
Yeah.
It's pretty much at full attenuation. So the alcohol's done. So basically once we make sure that it goes through and passes a diacetyl test and it's ready to move on to the process, we drop the temperature, then it gets moved up to the tank for carbonating. So right now, but you can at least taste what the beer is going to taste like.
Aroma.
It's a nice stout. So, it's coming into winter months here.
When is this going to be ready?
That will be ready in a couple days. So
we can probably have it this weekend.
We could. So depending on what day you need to get the beer by, either that or worst case scenario, we can pour you off something like this because you don't need it carbonated.
Exactly.
So it's
I love stouts to make with donuts, chocolate stuff. So they're always great for dessert. But
Perfect.
I'm going to talk to your people.
Sure,
run
totally.
out of here. But,
no worries.
I don't need the carbonation in anything really.
So even if it's not fully done yet, we can pull it off for you and crowler it because again, like you don't need it cold or carbonated because when you cook it, all that goes away anyway. Yeah. So, so that's a stout that is just now almost finished.
Yeah. Oh my God, the aroma on that thing.
And in the future too, what we'll have that's kind of fun, you got to come back and try. So we actually did an imperial stout that is sitting in those squirrels of the barrels we have downstairs, and the staves were soaked in the 3 different Kula rums. Yeah. And so it's actually been aging in white oak with the 3 different Kula rums for a few months now. So
when it's all going to be ready?
It might be ready this week. We sample it weekly to kind of see if it's ready, and it's getting close.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a fun, but that's like more, I don't know, you might be able to get like the intense flavors for cooking. We might be able to get you some for that, but that's going to be a fun sipping. Yeah. It's our first barrel-aged beer that we've done. I
feel like I'm going to stick to one stout, and I'm going to work with this, but that one definitely is for my drinking.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you drink.
That's for my hungry and horny moment.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Anything we need to mention before we wrap up? Obviously, I'm going to talk about the event that we're doing this Sunday, but anything that we need to put out there about Mahalo Aleworks? Because obviously your hours, that's easily.
So we've expanded the hours. So now we're actually open at 10 o'clock in the morning all 7 days, and then we close at 9 all 7 days. So we were open a little later Friday and Saturday and earlier Sunday, but we've just evened it all out. And then the 10 a.m. thing was really kind of feedback from visitors that are up country. Everyone goes to see sunrise at Haleakala, and then they're trying to kill 3-4 hours. So basically by opening at 10, we get the opportunity to have more people that are visiting come in, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think that's your time right now. Like, gotta go get the kids.
I know. I gotta go play dad taxi.
Because we know that they had a lot of sexy time, and now he's paying for it.
Yes,
it's not free.
This is the birth control lesson of multiple children, and tonight I spend 4 or 5 hours driving to 2 different theater classes. And I literally take a laptop with me, or I run errands. I mean, you got to do both.
I just had the director of Pro Arts Theater on the podcast last week as well. I've been so blessed having the most amazing guests, including you guys, and I'm so honored to be working with you guys.
Thank you.
Again.
You're a blast. It's always fun.
It's always fun. And you guys are doing music now.
We have music 4 nights a week, and then trivia every Tuesday, which is fun. It's a packed house most nights, and so if you're up here and want something to do,
please. And the sunset is usually awesome. That's why we're doing
epic sunset view, and
we're doing the event on a sunset hour. That's what I said. 4 o'clock, so they can get their donuts, and then by sunset they're
perfect.
Either horny or hungry and satiated.
They can do whatever they want with it.
Do whatever you want. Well, I'm not going to judge, but whatever you do, please enjoy them. The beer and the donuts this weekend. Thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I cannot wait. I'm going to go downstairs and, like I said, I'm going to hang out here for a minute and do homework.
Totally.
And drink some beer, like the old
Enjoy.
times, like I was in Europe and drinking beer and studying.
Awesome.
I love that.
See, that's what
Thank
you do.
you so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Mahalo.
Bye. Aloha.
Talk soon.
Let your crazy come out just a little bit. I can see by how you're moving that you're feeling it. You ain't have to hide it, you can't fight it, you're an animal.